never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
Student debt in the United States is now at $1.56 trillion. It is out of control. It is causing serious financial strain on our economy. Is it the next bubble? We have seen market crashes that have involved a lot less financial strain on this economy than we ever have with a bubble of $1.56 trillion. But instead of encouraging Americans to pay it off, to get out there and bust their butt and hustle and work just like our parents did and our grandparents and generations before us, we instead are going to forgive them of this loan. What kind of message are we sending our children? Are we sending our youth when we just say it's okay, we're going to write off $50,000 of your student debt? It's a horrible message. It's setting the country up for failure, and it's starting to look a lot like, no, not Christmas, but more socialism. Let's head over to Newsmax today, and we're going to listen to what they have to say about the ridiculousness of AOC pushing her cancel student loan scam at the sacrifice of selling $27 t-shirts and $56 sweatshirts. How's that for a scam? Let's take a look.
At boosting the U.S. economy and actually could cost about $1.7 trillion. So, Ophelia, perhaps Biden's plan is too good to be true.
Right. So a lot of college students seem to like the idea of canceling student loan debt because they tend to follow what they see on social media. And over the past couple of weeks, we've seen representatives like AOC tweeting that student loan forgiveness is good, actually. And she actually just started selling shirts that say cancel student debt. First of all, these shirts are $27. Maybe instead of encouraging her supporters to spend $27 on her shirt, she should be encouraging them to spend that money, maybe paying off some loans. And this is just another example of the liberal propaganda that these radical politicians are pushing on our college students. They're trying to get them to follow a cute slogan on a t-shirt without ever giving them the full picture. She isn't telling them that it is going to cost $1.7 trillion to cancel student loan debt. And she certainly isn't telling them that this money would come out of taxpayers' pockets. Now, at the Leadership Institute's campus reform, we found that when politicians leave key details such as the cost of eliminating student loan debt out of the full picture, our college students become brainwashed into thinking that everything is free and just everything can be wiped away, when in reality, that's not how it really works.
She raises so many good points here. What message are we sending to the American people, to our youth who haven't worked a day in their life, who are now going out into the workforce after taking out loans? They were adults. They were adults. They knew what they were getting themselves into, and they took out these loans. They signed on the dotted line. Their parents knew what they were getting themselves into. If you are going to write off, if you go into a loan with the intention of writing off debt, that's called fraud. That's called scamming the system. So we are actually now teaching these kids that it's okay to go through life scamming the system, that take out a loan, and if you can't pay it back, well, whatever, we'll just write it off. That's not how America works. And it's a great way to send this country into the next market correction. $1.7 trillion this bubble has grown to become. This is worse than some of the IT bubbles, that crashes that we've experienced, the real estate market crash. This is a huge amount of debt that, instead of now trying to figure out how to pay it off, we're going to do what America typically does and write off another big loan. What is with our government today why are we so quick to give everybody free money? This doesn't feel right. It doesn't look, it just doesn't feel normal. There's something going on here. I can't be the only one thinking, where is inflation gone? Where have the rules of economics gone? Why are we just throwing out the rules of inflation? I mean, when we print money, inflation's supposed to go through the roof, right? Why isn't that applying to today? Stimulus packages, more free money to everybody for locking them down. Now let's cancel student debt. The whole thing just doesn't smell right. But let's take a look what the American people have to say, because it is about the American people, what they have to say, and after all, they have the last word. Let's go back to the keyboard warrior cam and see what others have to say about the craziness and the insanity of all of this. Revan says, let me get this straight. 19-year-olds don't have the mental acumen to understand the student loans they took out, but 4-year-olds can decide their gender. It's a phenomenal point. 19-year-old adults don't have the mental capacity to understand how a student loan works. Yet, they claim at the age of 4, they know how to gender identify. How does that make any sense? It's a great comment. It's a very fair point. And it's just too crazy of a concept for me to personally get my head around. I don't understand it. And listen, the reason that we're calling this a scam, if we go back up to the headline of the article, AOC cancels student debt scam. Maybe instead of encouraging her supporters to spend $27 on her shirt, she should be encouraging them to spend that money, maybe paying off some loans. Ben Shapiro reported the other day that AOC is selling sweatshirts for $56. We're charging $56 for a sweatshirt. That's okay. That's okay, but it's not okay to have to own up to the student loans that you took out. That's a ridiculous amount of money. And this is coming from a left-wing progressive group of people who are trying to convince the rest of the world that the elite rich don't pay enough tax. Yet you're going to charge $56 for a sweatshirt. Makes no sense at all to me. Let's take a look at some more comments here and hear what the American people have to say about the ridiculousness of the possibility of wiping out the student loan debt. By the way, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to relinquish at least $50,000 of student debt per student. Who's going to pay for this? As we just saw in the video, do these college students realize that there is no such thing as a free lunch? Somebody's going to have to pay for this student debt. We can't just write off the money. Again, that's how we send inflation through the roof. So we're either going to pay through our nose indirectly by inflation, or the taxpayers are going to have to pay for it. So is it fair that we continue to tax the rich, the entrepreneurs, the business minds of the world, to then use that tax money to pay off student loan debt? How does that make any sense? Regardless of what side of the fence you sit on, Republican or Democrat, it is not right that we continue to tax the wealthy more just so we can pay off student loans that our youth failed to take responsibly. It doesn't make sense. Ann says maybe AOC could start a fund for paying off student debt, or start a GoFundMe account to see how many gullible people would contribute. If someone thinks it's a good idea to pay off student debt, let them do it, but don't force the rest of us taxpayers to do it. So America's not stupid. We've caught on to this game, this crazy game of socialism that we're going to find ourselves in much more if we lose Georgia. That's why we need to keep Georgia. I posted this morning, remember that statement that Chuck Schumer made? He said, now we take Georgia, then we change America. First of all, who's we? Who wants to change America? How about we keep Georgia and we fix America? fixing America is wiping out these stupid suggestions that we just start writing off more debt. So somebody's going to have to pay for this. It's going to be paid for by the taxpayers. And I don't think these college students understand exactly how severe this is. They just see free money. What do college students know about the real world anyway? I know they walk around, the millennials, and they claim to think that they have all these great progressive ideas. But sorry, guys, you don't know anything. You haven't been out in the real world. You've never paid off a car loan. You basically pay your own bills. Most of you are still living at home. You have no idea what it's like to get out there and hustle and sweat blood and tears over paying off your debts, which, by the way, I did. My parents did. I worked 3 jobs during college, and that taught me the value of a dollar. These kids have a silver spoon in their mouth growing up to begin with, and now we're just going to write off the debt. When are they going to learn? Are we trying to set this country up for economic catastrophe? Are we trying to bankrupt this country? We already have Social Security, $2-3 trillion debt. The stimulus package, trillions of dollars of debt. Now student loan, $1.7 trillion in debt. I don't think many of the American people, or most of them, especially the left, I don't think they understand just how bad this is about to get for us. It's starting to look too much like socialism, and it's going to get out of control soon if we don't nip this in the bud. So it's a great point, Am. Taxpayers aren't going to be happy. And I don't think we realize, even Republicans who actually voted for Biden. I get that you wanted to end the chaos. I get that Trump was too much for you to handle. I get that he was causing you emotional distress. But you do realize you just voted for somebody who's in favor of tax hikes, who's in favor of free medicine, who's in favor of a socialist agenda here. How could you be okay with that? It's shameful that so many Republicans actually voted for a Democratic president who's going to bring all these far left ideas into America and destroy even more than what it already is. Let's take a look at some other comments here. The only way they should cancel student debt, says Jonathan, is for students to pay off their own debt. Taxpayers are tired of footing these ridiculous bills. People, we need to stand up for this. We need to start voting for senators and congressmen and women who are against raising taxes. Raising taxes isn't good for anybody. When has raising taxes ever been good for an economy? It does nothing but suppress businesses. It suppresses the economy because the higher our taxes are, the less we're going to spend. If I have to pay more tax as a business owner, that means I'm going to spend less money on hiring employees. I'm going to spend less money on growing my business. So if I'm not growing my business, if I'm not hiring employees, I'm not fueling the economy. So the notion of let's just wipe out student debt and we'll pay it for from taxpayers' money, it's not going to work because these taxpayers are going to end up moving their business outside of the country like we've done for so many years. If my tax goes up as a digital entrepreneur who makes 100% of his money online, if my tax goes up, guess what I'm going to do? I'm moving this company offshore on paper. I'll still sit here in America. I'll still sit right here in New York, but I'm going to move my holding company offshore, which is what every single other smart business owner that doesn't have a nexus in their home state is going to do. And I found myself in debates and arguments like this all the time. And I try to tell people, listen, you're not going to win. Higher taxes, the only people who are going to lose from higher taxes are the middle class. Because anybody who owns a business and has the option to move it overseas is going to. Then I'll move it to an offshore jurisdiction where I pay 0% tax on my capital gains. I'll only bring in up to X amount to be in the lowest tax bracket possible, and then I'll keep the rest of the money offshore for a rainy day. It's not evading tax. It's avoiding it legally. So we have to be very careful, and I don't think a lot of these college students understand exactly what they're getting themselves into down the road by waiving all of these student loans and the other trillions of dollars of debt that we now find ourselves in. Let's go back to the keyboard warrior cam. We'll see what other Americans have to say about the insanity of all of this. Jennifer says, if you're drowning in student debt, how in the hell can you afford a $60 freaking t-shirt? This just shows AOC is so out of touch with the average taxpayer, she can't possibly represent constituents that she has no idea what their lives are even like. That's a very fair comment. You're drowning in student debt. AOC comes out with a ridiculous t-shirt that says cancel student debt. That's the new thing now. That's the new trendy thing these millennials are all kind of buying into. So you can't afford to pay off your student loans, but you can afford, or you're willing to pay for a $60 sweatshirt just because AOC says follow my cult into socialism. That's what's happening. So again, we're teaching people to forget their debts, forget their responsibilities. It's okay. Go out and buy the next iPhone. Go get brainwashed by mainstream media and just keep buying, buying, buying. And it's okay if you're leveraged to the hill, because if you can't afford to pay it all off, we'll just write it off. In most countries, you go to jail for this. You can't just take money. You can't just borrow money and not give it back. That's called theft. Now, I'm not suggesting that we implement these types of laws in the United States. I do realize and understand that people make mistakes, that sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, that we do need to hit the reset button, and it would be nice if our lives weren't destroyed by it. But with declaring bankruptcy comes 7 years of bad credit on your report. That's going to hurt you, and you need to learn from that lesson. If we just continue to write off debts with no lessons, not only are we going to send this country into bankruptcy, but we're teaching our younger generations that it's okay not to work hard. That's okay to just kind of get by in life. America wasn't built by just getting by. America was built with work ethic, with hustle, with determination, with ambition. And we're killing all of those traits right now, all of them, by moving into this far left progressive agenda. So it is right. If you can't afford to pay your student loans off, you should not be buying this shirt. So AOC, it's more far left hypocrisy that doesn't make sense to any of us here on the right. So Jim Hook says, no, but I'd wear a cancel AOC shirt. Love it, Jim. If you can't afford to go to college, scholarships are an option. So is the military paying for it by honoring a commitment? Imagine that. How about filthy rich colleges canceling student debt by using their endowments? It's simply like a rebate for charging excessively for decades. That's a good idea. How about the colleges start giving back some of this money for charging the insane amounts of tuition? How about we do that? Instead of going further into debt, how about college doesn't charge 120 grand a year? It is out of control right now. It's outrageous what we're charging. And how about we make the colleges pay for this? How come the only people that are going to suffer here are the American people? It always happens that way. The only people that are going to suffer are the middle class. Because like I said a minute ago, businesses, they'll move their holding companies offshore. They will avoid tax legally. They're not going to get hit. The wealthy never get hit by higher taxes. They hire attorneys to work their way and navigate their way through avoiding tax legally here in the United States. But if you work a 9-to-5 job and you don't have a business, you don't get to avoid tax. You get stuck with paying whatever tax bracket the government imposes on you. I can make $400,000 a year and be in Biden's highest tax bracket, but I'm not going to pay that highest tax bracket. I'm going to pay nothing near that. I'll be lucky if I even pay 15%. Why? Because I'm able to offset all of that tax or all of that income with expenses. I can write things off. I can max out my business expenses and bring that tax bill down. So business owners, the wealthy, the elite, the rich, they will always find a way to avoid those taxes. But the middle class 9-to-5 working person, they can't do that. You're not allowed to write off expenses. if you have a W-2. And I don't know why it's so hard for Americans, or many Americans, to understand this concept. And this is what we're failing to tell the younger generation. So AOC's out there saying, cancel debt, we need to get rid of it, we need to give you guys a fresh start, but she's not telling them the other side of the story. She's not telling them that it comes at a great cost. Let's take a look at a couple other comments here and see what the American people have to say about student debt and the ridiculousness of AOC and the squad and the far left constantly ramming down these outrageous concepts down our throats. Stephanie says, you took out the loan, now you pay it back. That's how it works, folks. Plain and simple, they should change some things about the way it's paid back so you can't ignore it for 10 or 15 years, then complain about the amount of compounded interest, however. Do you guys understand here? And I've had this argument even with my doctor, who was not happy about it. Let's take a look at how this whole thing works. Let's take a look at the chain of events here that cause all of us to be in so much debt. Student tuition is already outrageous to begin with, okay? Why do doctors make so much money in the United States? They do not make anywhere near what they make in the UK or in China or other developed countries throughout the world, okay? Not China, but the UK, Europe. There's a lot of developed countries. Doctors make nothing like this. In the UK, medicine is socialized. It's free. It's provided by the NHS, which means they don't have the money to pay a lot for doctors. But that doesn't matter for them because doctors don't make $200,000 a year to write a prescription. Sorry, guys. I know you went to school for 8 years, and I know you paid a fortune in tuition. But here's where we might want to dial it back a minute. Why are you paying $200, $200,000 a year? Why? For what? Is a degree really worth that much? Let's use our heads here. Is a college degree or a doctorate degree or a medical degree really worth that much money? So because you spent so much money, because you spent that amount on tuition, you now have to make that money back, right? We are shooting ourselves in the foot here. Doctors have to recoup the insane amount of money that they pay in college tuition. Therefore, their excuse is, well, I need to make this kind of money. I got to pay my tuition back. Well, if you didn't have the tuition bill in the first place, you wouldn't be pressured, or at least the pharmaceutical industry or the medical industry wouldn't feel pressured to pay doctors $200,000 a year to write a prescription. Neurosurgeons, different story. I totally get it. It's a very specialized skill set. Surgeons, it's a skill set. But a physician to check you over for the common cold, to write your prescription for Advil, I'm not convinced their salaries need to be $180,000 to $220,000. I'm all for people getting paid what they are worth. I'm all for it, and I want to see the middle class become wealthier. I want to go the capitalist route 100%. But at some point, we have to kind of take a step back and think, are these degrees worth it in the first place? Do you need to pay $50,000 a year to get a marketing degree when all you're going to really do is become a graphic designer or a salesperson? Is all that worth it? So it all starts with the colleges. So instead of taxing the American people to pay for this $1.7 trillion in student debt, why don't we start with the colleges and the universities themselves? Make them pay this back. And if they can't afford to stay in business, then we need to look at the educational system fundamentally and find out what's broken here. Because the last person who should ever have to pay for canceling student debt is the hard-working American taxpayer. I don't care that little Johnny got in over his head with his student loans. I can give a rat's ass about that. And neither should any of the other American taxpayers. That's his own fault. His parents knew what he was getting himself into, and we're setting our country up for failure, and we're sending the wrong message. Let's take a look at the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what other comments people have to say about how ridiculous of a concept paying off student debt or the government relinquishing or relieving the younger generation of their student debt. Tammy says, and this is a great point, Tammy says, if that passes, I want my mortgage paid off. I went into debt by borrowing knowing I had to pay it back, just like those students knew the same thing. Boost the economy by getting people back to work, not by more handouts. Socialism. This country is headed down a very dangerous path. I've worked this whole time in a school-based production products job. And she's right. Why don't we start forgiving mortgage payments? I've got $250,000 in outstanding mortgage payment. Why don't we write that off? Why do I have to pay it? I knew what I was getting myself into. We're going to start canceling student loan debt. Let's cancel mortgage payments. Since we're on a lending spree by the American government right now, let's just cancel it all. And by the way, I'd like my $100,000 back too. If these students start getting off of paying their student loan debts back, then I want my $100,000 back. Because the amount of agony and pain that both my parents and myself went through to pay those bills off is not fair or just to then tell everyone else we're just going to forgive them. How does that even work? So yeah, let's cancel mortgage payments. Let's give me my money back. Let's give everybody their money back. You watching this at home, if you paid off your student loans 10 years ago, 20 years ago, let's give you your money back too. It works both ways. Brandy says, even if they don't know, they wouldn't care. As long as their loans were abolished, gone, unless it was cutting into their own paychecks severely. Most young people don't give a flying crap about anyone outside of themselves. It's what today's society is teaching them. What they don't understand, what they need to be told, is that our government doesn't have that kind of money, to be honest, that it's coming straight out of everyone that works pockets for years and years to come. And if at which point we get in debt again, that means we have to borrow from other countries. Hint, hint. I wonder who that would be. But everybody just keeps drinking that Kool-Aid and act as if we're not setting ourselves up for failure. If we follow the Biden administration, might as well say goodbye to our freedoms in general. It's a great point. What we're not being told here is that we don't have that kind of money. America is supposed to be working on how to get out of debt. We can't afford to hold this much debt. At some point, our loans to these countries are going to come due. We are going to have to pay that back. And if we don't pay that back, other countries are going to start getting shitty with us real quick. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good economically, ethically, and it's not going to be good for the American people because we're going to have to keep raising our taxes to pay this money back. Look at, if you're not familiar with what's going on in Europe, Greece, Spain, Italy have the highest tax rates in most of the world. I think Spain's at something like 60%. 60% of your paycheck. I think it may even be high as 70% in some countries. How do you survive when you pay that much tax? All we have to do here to figure out the direction that America's headed is look at Europe. It's a crystal ball. We don't even have to guess here. It's a crystal ball. We can look straight into it and know exactly where this country's headed because they've been through it. They've been through joining. Look at the UK, for example. The UK joined the European Union. Now they want out of it. They want nothing to do with it. They want nothing to do with a socialist agenda. With socialism, you draw millions, tens of millions of freeloading immigrants with that. And that's exactly what we're about to see right now. We're about to see Biden, in his first 100 days, he wants to let 11 million illegal immigrants stay in America. He wants to just forget all about it. Forget the fact that they're illegal. This country has an unemployment rate already of around 8%. In the height of the pandemic, we were at 19% unemployment. New York State is at 10% unemployment. 1 out of 10 New Yorkers cannot get a job. And we're just going to let 11 million illegal immigrants stay in this country. That's his first course of action. Who does that? Why are we doing this to ourselves? We are setting this country up for failure. The writing is on the wall. It's becoming so bad now that even if we want to fix it, we're not going to be able to. America is damaged beyond repair at this point. And we're making it worse by writing off $1.7 trillion in college student debt. We're making it worse by letting 11 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, stay in America. It's a great way to mooch off the system. And the UK went through it and they said, we're done. Enough. We want Brexit. Brexit won. They're now getting out of the European Union. They want their country back. A lot of people scream racism. They're racist. The UK's racist. They want to kick everybody out. No, they want their country back. Just like I want to see America make a comeback. It's not racist. America was built on hard work ethic, on hardcore values that have worked very well for hundreds of years. Granted, we're only a few hundred years old, but it's worked. And we are undoing everything about what's worked very well for this country. Like or hate Trump, we weren't in a single war over the last 4 years. Not a single war. And it's sad that the next war that the American people face is bound to be a civil war. All because we voted for somebody who now wants to take this country in a direction so far left that 74 million Americans are now furious over. All because most of you voted for a president because you just hated or despised Trump because he was mean, because he didn't have tact. Makes no sense, but here we are. Let's head back to the keyboard warrior cam. Take a look at some other comments here. Crystal says, let's say we do that. Okay, let's say we write off the entire 1.7 trillion student loan debt. Let's say for a second that we actually write it off. Let's say we do that. What lender in their right mind would continue to offer student loans so people could go to college when there is the possibility that they wouldn't be paid back? It's a choice those students made and should be responsible for that choice. That's a great point. What lenders are going to actually let you borrow money again, knowing that the government can just come right in and start forgiving student loan debts? That's not sending a message that when we borrow money, we take our responsibilities seriously and we pay them off. What's going to happen now is everybody's going to go start getting money from these lenders. They're going to say, well, whatever, because our government is on a lending spree today. So I'm just going to sit back and wait. And if I fall into more, or if I don't pay my loans back, whatever, the government's going to bail me out. Because for most of these millennials' lives, all they've seen is bailout after bailout. These kids who have graduated recently, let's take a look at the kids who have graduated in the last few years. What have they seen America do? Stimulus relief packages, bailouts for airlines, $500 billion in bailout money for an airline that can't get its act together after 70, 80 years. We're still bailing them out. The system is broken. Sometimes you need to just let industries fail. This whole too big to fail garbage has been going on since the stock market crash back in 01. This too big to fail. Who's too big to fail? Let these industries fail, but stop putting America into the ridiculous amount of debt and handing that debt then to the taxpayers. Somebody's got to pay it. We can't keep borrowing from overseas because we owe them too much money. And if we keep printing money, inflation goes through the roof. Pick up an economics book, people. It's very easy to understand. Pure economics, and it doesn't work. It's going to break this country beyond repair. Gene says, no, this is just insane. It's called being responsible and being held accountable. But then again, the left wants the economy to collapse, so we will need to be dependent on the government for our basic needs. They would also blame that on Trump. If I hear a single person blaming this on Trump, I'm going to reach to my computer and strangle them, because Trump has wanted nothing to do with a socialist agenda. He wants nothing to do with free medicine. He wants nothing to do with bailing out students. But now that Biden is president-elect, you could just see them swooping in with the progressive agendas, just ready to attack, ready to start handing out free money to everybody. What happens when you hand out free money? Well, the government says, okay, higher taxes. Oh, you can't pay your taxes? Okay, we'll put a lien on your house. We now start to own property. This is how it works. This is how they start to filter into their system. Look at our friends in the North. Someone made a great comment on my personal feed the other day, which I'll pull up right now for you guys to see. They made a great comment, and it had to do with the friends from the North here now owing some of their government on property. Here's a scenario to think about. Kirk said this. Actually, we're going back to our first one. Maureen said, look to our friends from the North. Debt relief equals government partial ownership. They want total ownership of all property. That's where we're headed, people. That's where we are headed with these handouts, with these student loan leafs. Juliet said Ben Shapiro's broadcast, the sweatshirts. Yesterday, I did watch Ben Shapiro. Sweatshirts, AOC is selling sweatshirts for $58. Student loan forgiveness doesn't forgive the loan. It just transfers the loan to those who never asked for the loan, agreed to the loan, or benefited from the loan. Yep, the rich. It's a great comment, Aaron. It's a very good comment. Student loans aren't going to be forgiven. They're just going to be transferred over to forget the rich. They're going to be transferred over to the American people. We're going to have to pay for it in taxpayer money. I always love Kirk's comments. Kirk posted this on my newsfeed earlier. We're talking about student loan debt. We're talking about canceling $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. Kirk says, here's a scenario to think about. There are accreditation organizations, right? One being the United States Accreditation Council, and a few others that offer acknowledgement of validness of a university, college, school, and courses weighed on varying criteria. Now, what happens when a student uses these validations to weigh their commitment to an accredited program/institution, goes through and graduates with debt, and then suddenly the U.S. Department of Education publicly announces investigation of that particular institution for things like fraud? Yet at the same time, or shortly following, removes private lending and holds all student loan inaccessible. Forever debt? Meanwhile, business management has committed to avoiding applicants associated with the institutions under investigation or have been investigated, rendering the education null and void. And the investigation doesn't show anything, seeing the U.S. Department of Education never followed up on their findings, and the proof of investigation announcement disappears. But businesses remember the institution's name as tainted and undesirable, as well as their students being ignored, shunned, and dismissed, and undesirable or not employable. Should the hundreds of thousands of affected graduates and students in course be held to their debt? These are all phenomenal points, and this goes very deep into the situation. We're going deep into the economic fundamentals of how this whole thing breaks down. And it goes back to what I said a little bit ago, that we are now finding ourselves in a situation where lenders are going to be scared to death to lend this money, knowing that the government's just going to cancel loans whenever they feel right. We're now have people, what about all the millions of Americans who are going to say, well, what about my student loan debt? What about my debt? How about you give me my money back then? You're waiving their $50,000. I'd like to see $50,000, please. We keep printing money, inflation's going to go through the roof, or we have to borrow it from for other countries, in which case we're going to have to pay it back at exorbitant interest rates, which we cannot afford at this time, or it's going to the American people. So, where does any of this make sense? It teaches our millennials it's okay to write off debt. It teaches them not to work. It teaches them not to hustle. It's all wrong. This isn't what our country was built on. And this lending spree that the American government has now found themselves in needs to stop. We need to get back to work. We need to start making our own paycheck again. This is craziness. It doesn't feel right. There's something going on. And it's almost scary to see right in front of our eyes the direction this country is headed. We're a capitalist country. We're soon going to find ourselves in a very socialistic environment. And by the time we enter into these dangerous waters, it's going to be too late. We won't be able to pull ourselves out for decades to come. So let's prevent that from happening. Let's get rid of these stupid debt relief programs. Let's start fighting back. Let's vote for the right people. Let's take our country back. We keep Georgia. We fix America. Sorry, Chucky. Nobody wants anything to do with change. We want to fix this. Thank you guys so much for watching You Made It Political today. I really appreciate you joining the show. If you want to be a guest on the show, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Email guest@youmadeitpolitical.com or comment on any of these videos and any of these lives, and we'll love to patch you in. You guys have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you here tomorrow at 10 a.m. over at You Made It Political. If you like the show, like it, comment, share it, let people know. It's growing. We're getting the message out. Appreciate all of your support. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow,